TC Nation! Hey, Tutorial Tuesday. I've got another list. I'm going to do this 2 more times so I can get caught up on all the questions and get the shout outs that I promised. All of these I've answered. A lot of them I've answered on YouTube, but I'm doing these really fast before the end of the year because we're going to do something different with the Tutorial Tuesday. But I want to get these out before that point. So I want to give shout outs to all these people. The first one is, let's see, Terry F. I don't know where you're from, but Terry, we've got a question from you right here. It says, hello, there have been numerous games in-house that have resulted in one party running out of the draw pile. What is the intended action at that stage? Game ends, high morale wins, mulligan. I don't know what mulligan means. Oh, I guess shuffling and using them again. Combat until combat no more. What if no neighboring states are available for conquest, but each player holds active lands? Okay, so this is a great question. So Terry, the answer to this question is when you run out of cards in your draw deck, and there's nothing else, they're all in this card, you have 2 things you can do. So there's 2 things. One, you can shuffle them, and shuffle them, you take your discard pile, shuffle the cards, and put them back where your deck was. But when you play that, you're basically playing the exact same cards that you were playing that were rejected or taken out at some point. So another way of doing this is the way I play, is I always have a second deck, a backup deck, with lands and everything, just in case I run out of cards before the end of the game. That way, when that happens, I pull out my deck, I open it up, I put a brand new set of cards down, and it's a whole new experience after that game. If you use the same cards from the discard pile, shuffle them, and use them again, so this is option number 1. If you do that, it's like the same game played over again. And yeah, you could do it. I mean, there's no problem doing it. But wouldn't you want a little bit more action, a little different cards in the next half? Yeah, I do. So that's what I do. I shuffle them up, and I put a backup deck in the deck. So I don't do option 1. I do option 2, using a backup deck. Okay, so next question comes from John Unsicker. So John, this is actually a very interesting one. And this is from a rare card that was actually our first rare card from the Create Your Own Card contest 5 years ago when we first started. This is a question about Caesar Rodney. Now, Caesar Rodney is a really interesting card. You should be able to look it up. But Caesar, his abilities say this. With his influence, you win disputes coming from the abilities of and cards in play, and ties are resolved in your favor. Okay, so if you're playing a game and you both have the same attack and defense points, it's a draw. Or if my card says I automatically win the first attack and your card says you automatically win the first attack, it's a draw. Nobody wins. Well, this card allows you to win those draws. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out another word, but also the other added benefit is that if you have this card in play, if you get a dispute over, and now these disputes have to be legitimate, they can't just be throwing out an argument saying, hey, I win because this is an argument and I automatically win. It doesn't work like that. If a card says you get 300 morale points and you say, oh, I get 3,000 morale points, it makes no sense. They have to be legitimate discussions. And if you have to, take it to an adult. It has to be completely legitimate. But if there's a reasonable question about a card or the way the game's played, and it's legitimate, it goes in your favor. So automatically you win. It's your choice because you have Caesar Rodney in your deck. This was promoted, or this was asked for in the Create Your Own Card contest. The abilities were actually given in that. And it was our first one. And we're not going to be... as of the card right now, the rare card Caesar Rodney, we're not reprinting that one as is. So if you have that card, it's a very rare card. Not many people have it. I mean, literally, probably a dozen people still have that card. So, John, that's an answer to that. I hope you're able to get something from that this discussion. and are able to work it out with that person, whoever it may be. The next one is from David M. Hey Zach, I was wondering if explorers get put right into the next land you find, or if they must have an empty spot in another land for this to be placed first before he gets sent out to find a new land. Okay, sorry, my reading. Basically, he's asking, does the explorer get put into a land that exists, or does he automatically be put into a land that is drawn, a brand new land? That's exactly it. As soon as you play the explorer and you find a new land, he gets placed in that land. There's no need to be put into another land. But from last week, Anna asked a great question about South Africa. Now, South Africa says you have to wait an extra turn before you can discover a new land. So in that case, you have to take that explorer, put him in a land that already exists, and then the next turn, you can place him into the land that he discovers. So that's an answer to your question. Hopefully that helps, David. We got one last one for today, and this is from Lisa. And this is not exactly about cards, but it's more of how to play the game. When using an expansion pack, you are adding those cards to your starter deck, and yet there are not explorers in the expansion pack. So it makes the game take much longer and hard to move forward, as it becomes really hard to get a new land open. Is there a way to make using an expansion deck more workable? Maybe in the future, expansion packs should have a couple of explorers in them. That was something that was suggested by a player's mom, at least at the last tournament. Lisa, thank you so much for adding this. Lisa's been a great coordinator, a great ambassador for our company. And this is actually a good question, because a lot of people want to come into the games with like 300 cards in them. And yeah, there's explorers inside starter decks if you add those starter decks up. But what about if you're using expansion decks? If you take all 7 of the expansion decks, 9 if you talk about the pre-orders when they come in, and add them to one expansion or one starter deck, yeah, you're not going to have any explorers, and it's going to take you a long time to get through. This is why we always recommend that you start off with, or you play with, between 50 and 100 cards. Any more than that, you're probably going to have a hard time getting to the explorers. Because if you've ever heard of Murphy's Law, if you haven't, look it up. It's basically what can happen will happen. Which also means if your explorers can all be at the bottom of the pile, they probably will be at the bottom of the pile at some games. So keep your deck simplified, narrow down to the cards you like. Add the expansion decks in there, but take some cards out, the ones that you won't use or don't want to use. That way you can have a nice clean deck of about 50 to 100 cards, and you'll have a large assortment of explorers in there. If you have 300 cards, most likely all those explorers are going to be at the bottom. Same with the armies and anything else that you really want. Murphy's Law calls for it being not in the place that you really want it. So thanks again for joining me on this Tutorial Tuesday. Hopefully I was able to help you out. Thank you everyone for sending these questions. Lisa, David, Terry, and also John. Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will catch you next time. Take care. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow actually. Take care. Bye.